Hello there, a very good afternoon and a warm welcome to the Citizens Chat Show on Civic Space TV. We are streaming on YouTube. I'm your host, Judith Atim, and it's always a pleasure to have you join us from wherever you are. We are glad to have you. Well, today we are discussing the NUP party flags controversy and the fight for a fair process. As always, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel and to leave us a comment, but also to follow us on our other social media platforms, that is TikTok, X, Facebook, and so on. Also drop us a comment on this channel, and just know that we do pay attention to the things that you say. Well, the last few weeks, we have focused a lot on the ruling NRM party and its internal processes. And from our conversations with members of the ruling party in the last show and many others, at least we've seen the party acknowledging through its members, of course, that it is time to put its house in order. Today, however, we are shining the spotlight on the National Unity Platform Party, which is only 5 years in the game, but it is Uganda's largest leading opposition party. Well, NUP captured the hearts of many, but it is now facing a fierce internal storm. So today, we are trying to make sense of what is going on in this party, but also the conversation today does not just exist in a vacuum. We still have the backdrop of what happened in the ruling party in its recent internal processes. And today I am joined by two guests, but don't mind, the others will be joining us a little later. From my immediate left, Dr. Robert Ojiambo, head of the History Department at Kyambongo University. A warm welcome to the show, Doctor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, viewers. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And next to him, of course, is retired Major Awich Pollar, Director for External Affairs at the NRM Secretariat. He's also an advocate of the High Court. A warm welcome to the show, Major.
Thank you, Judith. Greetings to Dr. Robert. But I'm missing my Guarantare and missing the congressman.
They will be joining us. So just for our viewers' sake, the other panelists, Dr. Sarah Bireete and Mr. Joseph Cheno, are a little held back, but they should be joining us in the next session of the show. But also, I know you might wonder that we are discussing NUP and we don't have someone represented from the party. Well, earlier I reached out to two members of the party, that is the National Treasurer of NUP, Mr. Benjamin Katana, and also Counsel George Musisi, who is a lawyer of the party, one of the lawyers of NUP, and they both expressed interest. They would have loved to join us, but because of other commitments, they are not able to be with us today, but we do hope that we can have them some other time. But of course, they do share some of the, they've shared with me what they would like us to, what the party position is when it comes to the discussions and the controversies that we are seeing playing out in different media platforms. So just very quickly, you all know that the vetting and award of party flags in NUP for the various elective positions, particularly parliamentary seats, have triggered widespread controversy. There are accusations of favoritism, bribery, and a lack of transparency, which are dominating both traditional media and social media platforms. And this has led to a major question: is the NUP truly a party of the people, or are its flags being awarded to the highest bidders? Of course, the key issues, like I've mentioned, the vetting process. The party's Electoral Management Committee has been tasked with the crucial role of vetting candidates, but the process has been marred by delays, accusations of non-meritocratic approach, also the postponement of parliamentary vetting from late August to mid-September has also only added to the public's impatience and suspicion. There is the widespread disgruntlements. A significant number of members of the NUP supporters who failed to secure party flags for local government positions have also publicly expressed their outrage. They claim that the party's leadership has ignored grassroots support and has opted for candidates who are not the popular choice. So some of these people are threatening to run as independent candidates. The frustrations are running really deep. And of course, there are questions about what this means for NUP's unity and its ability to present a united front against its political rivals, largely the NRM. But also the NUP has time and again come out and publicly maintained that the party is open to addressing all grievances. And they vehemently deny the claims of favoritism and bribery. and instead they are urging their members to trust the process. So the question we asked earlier remains, NUP, which was founded on the principles of change and transparency, is it living up to its promises? The controversy over the party flags challenges the foundation of its credibility, and also it is raising serious questions about its internal democracy. But like I said earlier, this is not a conversation in a vacuum. The ruling NRM is just coming out of a very messy internal election process with reports of massive voter bribery marring its primaries and the recently concluded National Delegates Conference. And the question again is, are these challenges simply a new problem, or are they a shared ailment of Uganda's political parties? I'll start with you, Dr. Ojiambo. When you look at the challenges that that both parties are facing, all these internal struggles, the accusations of money, money in politics, and the ills that come with this, what do you make? What sense do you make of these kinds of developments?
Yeah, thank you, Judith. To make sense out of what is happening in Uganda now, you need to give a background of how NUP came to be. NUP started as a pressure group, People Power, which began with a meeting at Makerere University, where people thought that they were drumming back for DP, for people who had left DP to come back home. After that meeting, that idea did not materialize. When the mainstream DP, I think, failed to agree with a number of things. And there were a lot of debates on whether they should have a party or run as a pressure group. But before we knew, NUP had acquired the political party which was defunct, belonging to that gentleman who later became a very big problem to them. So, Chibalama's party. So this looked like it was not a party that was formed on certain ideology and background. So it was a special purpose vehicle. Because there is an election which had already come, and in fact, when it was registered as a party, it was a shock to very many people, and they even ended up using the old constitution of the party that had been formed by Chibalama and his group. So at the end of the day, the issue then was to have an election. Remember, that was a tense election where we were going for election amidst COVID-19. So at that time, it was not very easy to see what the problems would be. They normally say that for you to see the nakedness of a monkey, you wait for that monkey to climb the tree higher. That's when you see that it doesn't have a trouser, it is naked. So NUP now 5 years, and in the 5 years, there have been turbulent years of a political party, to call its name. This is a party that has been on the run. Every time police is chasing its members, many of its supporters have died, others are in prison. The president himself has had a lot of issues. The party headquarters have been ransacked severally, and there is a lot of problems. But remember, there were internal problems that were sparked off by the issue of the 500 million of the vice president then of Buganda region, Mr. Mpuga. And that was also not a very difficult thing, a very easy thing to settle. Of course, it ended up with Mpuga moving up with this, going out with some people. And right now, they are formed the DF or DA. Now, before that, there are people who had missed the flag last time, and we are not very happy with how they had missed that flag. The likes of Mavike, the likes of Sebagala, this one of Kawempe, the likes of this Mukaku and Kasivante. So these ones had already formed a group which was already a breakaway from the NUP. They were just waiting for something to happen, and when this Impuga thing came, they jumped on that bandwagon, and there was. Now, forward quickly, because of all these problems, I think NUP has never sat down to restructure itself as a political party. It has remained operating as if it is a pressure group, and in the middle there, they had amended their constitution and laid out some of how the things would be done. But when that constitution was submitted to the Electoral Commission, it was rejected. So NUP has used that as an excuse, therefore, to use the old method. And that's what comes up with this whole thing that we are now discussing. But for me, I don't want to narrow this issue to NUP and look at individuals in NUP and so on. I want to look at it broadly. Broadly, I have always said that the project for political parties in Africa has succeeded in very few countries. When you see, for example, our neighbors in Kenya, I think the only political party that is trying to do things in form of a political party is Orange for Democratic Movement, ODM.
Yeah.
But look at the one that is supposed to be in government. Is not also purely like a political party. It's a formation of very many things that have come up to form the Democratic something, DA. Democratic Alliance, and that Democratic Alliance has a lot of issues. So the only parties that run like political parties in East Africa, it is CCM, Chama cha Mapinduzi in Tanzania. There is NRM and RPF in Rwanda. And SPLM is you are not sure whether it is the other rebel outfit which was fighting against Sudan, or it is not clear. But all the three that I have mentioned are state parties. These are state parties. There is a very thin layer between the party and the state in Uganda, between the party and the state in Tanzania, between the party. It is even worse in Rwanda. In Rwanda, it is even thinner. So, and remember, these are guerrilla parties. They normally want to call themselves revolutionary. They are not revolutionary. They are guerrilla parties. These are Bote used to call them bandits, banditaries who turned themselves into movements and then became parties. Then they became governments. So their banditary nature is still there. First of all, they don't leave the use of the army. They will always use the army as their one of their section to survive. So NUP suffers from that problem. Now, when NUP is formed, they normally say that when the mother cow is chewing the cud, the calves are watching carefully. So NUP has borrowed some ideas from these guerrilla parties, whereby if you look at it, there is a way it also wants to run like a military outfit, and they have accused it, and many of its supporters are even in prison for that. Two, the leader looks like the thing belongs to him, and therefore if you are not loyal to him, you have a lot of problem. So they have not done much to come up with structures that can run the party. For example, it is not clear, very, very clear, on who are the people in charge of this vetting process. Because some people tell you it is a gang of five. A gang of five, that is the party president, the party general secretary, and a few others. Others tell you that there is a committee chaired by my very good friend, but you doubt whether that person has a lot of powers on that. Others tell you, no, this is just a Chagulanyi matter. This is just so for an outsider like me, when I'm trying to look at all these things, I am confused. So they have failed to construct a structure. But two, even if they constructed a structure to run into, the state that they are operating in is very hostile and therefore always forces them to also operate in a clandestine method, and that's how they have been explaining that there is no way you can go openly and organize these things and NRM or government does not penetrate in them. But as I will give later, I thought that NUP would have done better, even if they were to use their approach. For example, I don't see why you have people who are doing well. You have an MP, you have an LC5, you have an LC3 or mayor is doing well. Why do you subject him or her to this very unclear method? So they would have done like what older parties do, not only in Uganda, not only in Africa, even in America. I don't think you can stand against a governor or a member of Congress who is doing well in the party. He's given first priority until they confirm that this one now is not doing well, or because his points have gone down, or he's not loyal to the party. As he started speaking, he did not support
certain bills.
Of the
party, yes.
It is very rare in the United States that the Democratic Party or the Republican Party will change their candidate towards an election. It is very, very rare until they say so.
Thank you.
Now in Uganda here, under NUP, what they did, I was really shocked that they were putting all their people who had given them a foundation in the first election. An example is the mayor of Kira. The mayor of Kira, by the way, they voted Kira was the second best in performance in Uganda. Number two, this man is very loyal to the party. I saw him being beaten in Kawempe. In fact, he has now broken hands. He has been in all party things. And all of a sudden, they tell him now, you are out. They have brought in another person who is not known. And the mayor also did something very funny, immediately joined this PFF of Lukwago. So there is a problem, and you see even their MPs, people like Segona are not sure whether they are going to get the ticket. In fact, there is very high rumor that the ticket may be given to Walukaga. But now when you look at Segona and Walukaga, and you want really to build the party, you want people who are going to be assets to the party, how do you leave Segona? Even if he abused your mother, even if he abused your father, really, how do you leave Segona? I'm not undermining you, Walukaga, but really you look at that. And many others where there are a lot of problems. I think even NRM, by the way, I have accused them. How do you take your sake, your cream de la cream, to be elected by 24,000 people who don't even have an idea of what the party ideology is? I have looked at this Republican Party and the Democratic Party in the US, which are big. They are not, you can't even talk about the NRMs where they are. These are parties which have worked for hundreds of years, where they have only at most 4,000 delegates to choose the presidential nominee in that case. For only 4,000. And those 4,000 will have been screened from down. It doesn't mean that you are going to pinpoint and say you go, but they are screened from the village level if we are talking about a village in Uganda. So they are, by the time they reach the state level, because for them they go per state, they are screened 4,000 cream de la cream that now selects the governor, and then the governor is confirmed and so on.
I need to move to
this other thing, the last thing which I want to talk about, what is happening in NUP, I think is a general Ugandan problem. The problem in Uganda, which I've already said, that in any process now here is a recipe for corruption, is a recipe for, I've had rumors, I have not yet confirmed, that tickets, some tickets are for sale. The same problem you remember happened in NRM. With NRM, even there is evidence, because the registrar for Kapichorwa was arrested, soliciting money from people. The registrar for Namutumba, in fact, for him, his price was 150 million. You bring 150 million, he gives you a flag. So I think it's a very big problem. It's not a NUP problem. It's not an NRM problem. It is a Ugandan problem. The only problem with NRM is that for them, they will be spending state money.
Thank you. So, Major, I want to come to, I know I cannot ask you to comment on the issues of another party. Clearly, but you can have an opinion.
The man is a
but
Ugandan.
yeah, I know. But you know, looking at your own party, also grappling with similar internal issues. We saw this SEC this election of SEC members and the delegates conference that just ended, and the accompanying allegations, serious allegations of voter bribery. So someone might say, your party does not have the moral ground to criticize the mess in another party because your own house is in disarray. How would you respond to that?
Well, that our party has problems, so we don't have
the moral authority, the moral ground, yeah.
To check. Well, that is neither here nor there. But personally, even if we were clean, I wouldn't be interested in whatever happens there. It is their problem or it is their choice. But all the same, when a matter becomes a public matter, anybody can give an opinion because everybody is seeing it. And therefore, I would look at it as a public spectator than an NRM person criticizing them. One thing I want to note is that whatever happens there, especially accusations of corruptions and all this, is just a natural instinct of material interest. All our consciousness are shaped by materiality. Our consciousness is not shaped by spirituality, that some spirit comes and forms consciousness. No, it is that I'm seeing that there's this table, and that is why I reflect in my mind that there's this table. So when it comes to material interest like money, it has no boundaries, it has no colors, no parties. And that's why I'm saying those who accuse NRM for being a party which is corrupt is making a mistake. It's a natural material instinct. Judith, American army went to Iraq and the banking system was destroyed in Iraq. They attempted to give them cash. The paymaster was no different from Biakutaga. He took off with the money. The whole American army took off. The man took off, flew back to America with cash. He stole it. So that shows to you the human nature. So it's therefore not correct for somebody to assume that NRM is the only corrupt person when material interest is like that. Of course, some people, and I believe I fall in that category, have self-moral restraint. And the self-moral restraint is accompanied by the fact that you would have devised genuine sources of income, genuine methods of existence. That therefore will curtail you from exercising this immediate material interest to get in the fraudulent way. Apart from that, all these attempts in technology by Europeans or Americans to put is actually getting corruption. For example, you enter a supermarket, they put systems where when you come out with an item, it will be detected. They put in the accounting system where all the things sold will reflect. So you want to carry some money home. Now, if this was not a human nature, all these institutions and measures wouldn't have been put in Europe because that is naturally a human instinct. But our friends have been saying, it is NRM which is corrupt. It is NRM which is corrupt. It's a human nature. And that is why it is good to have systems in place to control it. The other thing I'm saying is that for our brothers in a NUP, their political movement came up in nearly one geographical area. And it was for sure that if you use that ticket, you would get a political win. And therefore, they saw the party as a cash cow. And that was very vulnerable to selling. Because you would know that if I get a flag in a Kawempe, definitely I will go through. And that even gives more motivation for the people in the power to even sell it. And at the same time, it also gives motivation to the person buying the flag to buy it. And that puts them at a very vulnerable and risky situation, which should have called for a very strict institutional approach to such vulnerability. Because they know very well, you are in a PG, you get the flag automatically to parliament. In some situations, let's say in Elango, it would be difficult for you to buy a flag, because even if you bought a flag, that is one stage. The next stage, you are still going to battle it out. So that vulnerability, the party, the NUP didn't see it. And therefore, it would have been a challenge for them to build legal systems or institutional systems for deciding candidates or deciding flag bearers. Unfortunately, their system is so neither here and there. The last time for Kawempe North, we would see a semblance of a debate. I don't know after that what happened. I remember one candidate, I think it's Sereko, the one who cried. He said that when he was presenting, he said, if he is sent to parliament, he will box Anita and kick Anita. And he even demonstrated it. Then we said, if that is the method of choice or decision making, then that would really be unfortunate for them. The other aspect which is leading to the core of what you're calling a crisis with our brothers is also inability or failure to build a national outlook of the party. For sure, the party appeared like a regional party. Their party appeared to have a tribal sentiment. Even where it tried to take a stronghold outside Buganda, it was neither here nor there. It tried in Busoga, it was difficult. They got a flag bearer and a victory in Umbale, but you know the Umbale setting also has kind of semblance of Buganda sentiments, especially where Semei Kakungulu based itself. Nearly everybody is speaking Luganda, and there's a lot of sentiments and migration and settlement there. So this inability to build a national outlook further made our brothers so vulnerable to manipulations, because you couple with the view I had before, because you know that in this tribal area and you'll therefore get the flag and surely go to parliament, it increases vulnerability, and it is more of a challenge if you don't have systems to put it right. Of course, we have had manifestations of what is here. So at the beginning, it appeared like a joke. It appeared like not true, where they were actually allocating positions, including to relations, including sexual relations like girlfriends and boyfriends. Particularly girlfriends were beneficial. Cries were that the flags were being given to girlfriends or for big people in the party. And it was at first rubbished off and said it was a lie, but slowly by slowly, truth is catching up with them. So you can see all these challenges that comes up with it. I'd also like to respond to what Dr. said about NRM and other parties, which he calls a national institution or national parties. He says they are not revolutionary.
They are state parties.
The state parties. I want to respond, but just before that, there was, I think, a discussion I was with Dr. and our colleague said that I shouldn't respond to what they have said. He said, you don't need to debate each other's opinion. Then my response was, if we're debating here and you're talking about NRM, including calling for a regime change, and of course all sorts of accusations, and you say I should leave it, that is unfair, because even a communications commission insist on a balanced view in a talk show because they expect you to challenge the views of the other. Secondly, in law, if somebody makes an affidavit, paragraphs which are not rebutted are taken like an admission because you left them to go on. So I told my friend, I said, you man, you are talking of NRM, corruption, all this, regime change, And you expect me to get a microphone and talk about Arsenal and Man U and the leopards in the national park and the fish in Lake Victoria. I leave this one. Not at all. I will always respond to it, and that is the spirit in which the Uganda Communications Commission always insists of a balanced view. In fact, they always say it is NRM cadres who fail to turn up and making panelists only be composed with opposition. But I will always try to be there. So on the issue of the party, I still insist, Doctor, that NRM, if you don't want to use the word revolutionary party, if it is painful, you call it a progressive party. It's a progressive party.
That is even worse.
I have done that as Director, External Affairs. You saw in Kololo how I made sure that all progressive parties were present in Kololo. From Mediterranean in Algeria to Atlantic Ocean, African National Congress, and Latin America, I brought everybody to Kololo because we like to share ideas with progressive, like-minded parties. And of course, you have to prove progressiveness and revolutionary in attempts to have not only in your ideology, but even in the programs manifesto that you present to the people and its implementation. How does it impact on the lives of the people? Does it change the life of the people? Now, when people's lives are changed or improved, then you qualify to be a revolutionary party and a progressive party. And I think we have met the test.
Thank you, Major. I want to announce that one of our other panelists, Honorable George Odongo, is in the studio, and I'm going to give him a moment and give our production team a moment to just get him to join us. But George, as you will come in, I think I'll also ask the same question that I posed to Major. I mean, both of you coming from the same political ideology. You know, there is a thinking that since your own house in the ruling party is in disarray, the party does not have the moral ground to actually critique the mess in another party. I'd like to hear your thoughts when you make it here. That's after the break.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back, and as you can see, our panelists' size is growing. We are joined by Honorable George Stephen Odongo, member of the East African Legislative Assembly. A warm welcome to the show after so many weeks away, George. We're glad to have you.
Thank you very much.
And a wall.
Thank you.
No leave.
Can
just
you tell
disappear.
us what you've been up to?
I have been missing my audience, so, but I'm glad I'm back.
Thank you. So of course we're continuing with our discussion on the topic of the NUP party flags controversy and the fight for a fair process. And before you joined us, of course, we were looking at this problem, also casting our eyes back to the recently concluded internal party process within the NRM, because we think it's only fair to compare, to have a comparison between the two. And Major here in his submission said, yes, he cannot comment as a party, but he thinks as a human being, certainly his opinion does matter. And his argument is that irregularities in our parties when it comes to things like bribery and so on and abuse is not just cannot just be reduced to political party dynamics, but rather to the frail nature and weaknesses that human beings carry with them, the character of persons. But the question I had thrown earlier was, as a party, someone would say, well, why would someone in the NRM comment about the mess in NUP or any other party for that matter, when the NRM house itself is in disarray? How would you respond? What would be your response? Before you give us your personal opinion, of course, about what is happening.
You see, NRM, NUP, DP are in competition. And when we had our own challenges, I think the people who laughed louder were those in NUP. And we thought probably they had their house in order, only for them to demonstrate to the whole country how naked they were. So, you know, sometimes they say that don't laugh at your neighbor because you do not know what may befall you. So it's our time actually to, I don't want to say we want to celebrate, but I think we want to demonstrate to the rest of the country that the people who have come to compete with the national resistance movement have projected an image outward there of infallibility, of superior organization, of being more structured. But we have now seen, and the country has seen for itself, that all those were pretensions. They have been pretending, and now they have been exposed, and even they are even worse. You know, for the NRM, you can excuse the national resistance movement because you can see that our structure is so permeates up to the village level, all over the country. But some of these political parties do not extend beyond certain geographical areas. And if they can fail to organize themselves within those limits, what would happen if they had the kind of infrastructure that the national resistance movement has? But I don't want to really over-amplify this, because you see, as a country, I think we transitioned into a multi-party political dispensation without preparing ourselves, and we have not developed a political culture that allows for growth of political organizations. So most of these political organizations are born out of I don't know, but either yes, there is passion, others is frustration with things that might have not been going well within the ruling party, but they are really not born out of a solid ideological position or national outlook, so that you can have the necessary preparations, the necessary organizational infrastructure and discipline to be able to build a credible political organization. So all of us have these challenges. And, I can tell you that this is not, I mean, you saw what happened in the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm. Would you say this is a national problem that is permeating across our political parties, and what would be the antidote to this?
Yeah, it's for me, I think it's a national problem, because if you see that in the NRM we are still having challenges in spite of the fact that we have been there for a long time, we still have challenges. But you're also seeing some of these political parties. But let me tell you this: if your factory setting is violence, chances are that it doesn't matter how long it takes, it will always expose itself. I'm just using violence as one of them. So the formative stages of these political organizations and what informs their birth, will also expose their character even as they keep on growing. So the true character of these political organizations keep on revealing themselves along the way. So the problem that we have is that we have not, over the years, built a political culture that allows for us to organize, for us to embrace competition. So much so that even if we lived in a one-party state, let me first tell you this, even if we lived in a one-party state, as long as the political culture is that does not appreciate competition, that does not appreciate organization, that does not have discipline, you will always have that. The National Resistance Army, NRA, I'm not talking about any other, the National Resistance Army, when they came and took over Kampala, there was no room for indiscipline. There was no room for indiscipline. And that formed the character of the National Resistance Army, up until it became the Uganda People's Defense Forces. Now, when it became Uganda People's Defense Forces, it has inherited that character, but I think there are also still some elements that have come in now, so they are grappling with the changing context. So, but you see, formative stages and the culture of a political organization, informs how it conducts business. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what you're seeing right now is really that it's a whole governance challenge. I want to put it broadly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that we need to fix our governance landscape, mm-hmm. so that everybody who is part of that governance landscape can then play by the rules, and that's when we shall have a reset of our political systems, organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. And I think we have Dr. Sarah Bireete also joining us now. We'll actually just take a little bit of a break and just allow the team to rearrange how we are sitting so she can come over here. And we continue with the discussion. Let's take another break and then we'll be back.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the break, and glad you're still with us here on the Citizens Chat Show as we continue with our discussion on the controversy surrounding the NUP party flags and the fight for a fair process. We are joined by Dr. Sarah Bireete, Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. Sarah, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, apologies for joining late. Good afternoon, fellow panelists and viewers.
So I would like to hear your thoughts, of course, about this internal disputes that we're hearing from the NUP camp. I mentioned earlier to our viewers that we tried to reach out to two members of the NUP who would have really loved to be with us today. Some good colleagues, Benjamin Katana and also Councillor George Musisi. Unfortunately, they are unable to be with us, but they promised to make time and join us some other time, and we'd still definitely love to have them. So very quickly, we've been following all the news that has been coming from the NUP camp, both on the mainstream media and on social media, the issues of party flags going to the highest bidders, bribery, party flags also going to people who are in personal relations with some members of the party, and so on and so forth. Just very quickly, what are your insights into this?
Well, the optics coming from Kabule are not good. When you see so far the number of independents for the local government elections that have been nominated in Kampala Metropolitan, but also Central Buganda region, the highest number of independents is coming from NUP, which is also not good for the party. As a country and as people working on governance, you know, a transition from Kororo's crime scene in the NRM Delegates Conference to drama at Kavule is not good for democracy in Uganda. And I want to underscore the fact that anybody in a race to replace NRM should do better than NRM. Because if you cannot do better than NRM, then there is no need for replacement. Ugandans should not seek change for the sake of change. The standards are higher. Ugandans who want change, want something better for this country. It's not a matter of replacing faces in government. There should be credibility in that claim for regime change. NUP comes from a disadvantage of a constitution that do not allow party primaries. Their new constitution was blocked in court gymnastics, although I've been blaming the Electoral Commission for having placed an injunction on themselves. A mere filing of a court petition is not an injunction on a process. If the petitioners had no capacity to proceed and process an injunction, you don't place an injunction on yourself. The Electoral Commission should have proceeded, registered the constitution, and then wait for the outcome of court, because they can always deregister. So having held themselves is a bit unfair in terms of standards of rule of law. There is no injunction on that process, and NUP should have challenged the conduct of the Electoral Commission.
Mm-hmm.
But they should also have challenged the failure of court to determine that challenge on their constitutional amendments. Having said that, if you have a constitution that limits you from holding party primaries, what options are you then left with in selecting your flag bearers where there is competition of the people who need the flag? The common sense of leaders should have come in at play on this matter. NUP is 5 years old, has done well in some areas, but I think there are areas where they are doing badly. They are no longer a new party on the block. We have PFF, which is a few months old, so they are no longer a new party. And the honeymoon of 5 years is enough for anybody who is offering the alternative to the country. If you are at baby steps, then you have no business being an alternative. This is an 62-year independent country where Ugandans who desire change know what they want. So NUP claims to be using a two-method verification. First, I want to put remarks on the composition of their EMC. You cannot have a candidate sitting to vet other candidates. So on the first step, even before you bring in contestants, NUP scores a failure. If somebody is interested in competing for power, what business do you have putting them on the committee to vet others? Don't you have other people? Even outside party membership, can't you hire experts to vet your candidates? So NUP failed at mere constitution of a committee by putting their people with an obvious conflict of interest, competing also for the flag. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they were blinded at that level. So when you go to the method used by NUP, saying they use 60% information on the ground, 40% competence. And even the distribution of marks, in my view, is a failure. Because what are the duties of an MP? This country is choking on the weight of the worst parliament ever. Because we have clowns in parliament. Clowns that have never even read the constitution, yet their main duty is to protect the constitution and promote constitutional governance. But ask them an article which provides for functions of parliament. 80% of those clowns don't know. So if I am a party competing to take power, I will put 60% on competence. Because I want to show a better alternative to what is prevailing at the moment. Not to show that I can lower the level. Because anybody coming to power and preparing to lower the standards where NRM has already taken us is worse for this country. Then you would rather keep NRM. So I would put 60% on competence and vet people who qualify to be legislators. We are preparing to celebrate 30 years of the 1995 Constitution, and I've had the benefit of watching some of the raw data from Media Plus, who recorded the whole constitutional making process in 1994-95. If you look at the caliber of MPs, the 284 Constituent Assembly delegates that made the Constitution, if Uganda had kept those people in the parliament, we would be a first world country. A lot of what is going wrong in this country is the failure of parliament, including tinkering with the Constitution, part of my friend, Right Honorable Kadaga's legacy. If we had retained those people, the caliber that you can hardly find today, Uganda would be a first world country because they would have administered proper checks and balances on the excesses of the regime. So when we are talking because of the failure to check the excesses, and then you parade clowns to bring them to the next parliament, should Ugandans celebrate? No. So 60% would have been competence, 40% on the ground. But how do you establish the ground? I would get a statistician to administer one of their methods. I like the popular method of the Kish grid, where you say the Kish grid. For one respondent, you jump 8. You ask a 9th. For another, after the second one, you jump another 8. Ask the 9th. You would come up with an accurate report of who is popular on the ground. But this business of gathering a few people, go at the border stage. If you come to the border stage in my village where I'm born, I'm the most popular Ugandan that has ever lived. If you go to my town, I will score above 100%. So where did they go? To claim who is popular on the ground. But also popular for doing what? You could have people who like being comedians on border stages. They will be ticked as popular. So their functions should be in sight of who are you vetting. I don't know what is coming for members of parliament. I hope it will not break. No, because they haven't released the list. But what the rumors in the corridor is that most of the incumbents that are a bit sensible with the national character are likely to be dropped. And that's very unfortunate.
I would like you to comment, of course, also on the issue of the party flag going to the highest bidders, the money changing hands and so on. I don't know to what extent this is actually true. I did not get any concrete response actually from the people I actually reached out to. But what have you had? What other interactions or conversations you've had, if any, with people who perhaps have experienced that kind of thing?
Well, you know, the stories of money have been around since 2020. I used to think that it's just blackmail. I don't have evidence, but for 5 years, now you hear random people talking about. The other day, a lady got stuck on the road, a simple accident, and then the person who they collided with phoned and said, but where are you coming from? Like, we are from the village, and then unconsciously she said also she had taken money to somebody. So I think it might not be official according to the stories you hear, but whoever is extorting money from people, the NUP leadership has a duty to stop that nonsense. If they want to charge money from consultants, let them levy a fee officially and say for this post bring this nomination fees. But these calls of midnight, if you don't bring this, they've been common and they've now become more on the surface. I don't know to what extent they are true, but the NUP leadership has a duty to stop that.
So the consensus here is that what we are dealing with is not just a new problem, it is a problem that cuts across parties and the nation. And I know we've talked about this many times, but how do we actually correct course for the party, but also for the countries? Major here was his argument was to the effect that this is not just, we talked about NRM, but this is not an NRM issue. But he also doesn't think this could be a political party issue. This is something to do with individual characters and weaknesses.
This morning I was reading the story on the series of the constitution making process that the Daily Monitor and the Nation Media Group are serializing. I just read the comments by Odongo in 2001. He passed on in 2018. He said that, and he was talking about the Constituent Assembly elections in 1994. This is 30 years ago. He said then that he had never seen the use of money in elections and voter bribery in his life, and he was shocked. So you can compare his statement with that of Uhuru, the Kampala Salim Uhuru, saying, I've never seen such sacks of money in my life. This is 1994, and Odongo was talking about NRM, and this is 2025 by an NRM delegate in their delegates conference. Same statement, money. So the NRM introduced use of money and vulgarized our politics to that extent. Going by that statement of Odongo, I was not very old in SEA elections, but I remember, I think when like in senior 3, around there.
Senior 3, 4.
Yeah, around there. And Dr. Adoniat Veronda, now deceased, defeated the Major Mshega then, who is now a retired colonel, in our race. Nobody used money in my area. These were prominent people. Dr. Adoniat Verondo, as a former minister in Obote 1 and Obote 2, was very rich. He was the richest person in our area. We would see the latest vehicles from his home. He never used money that he's bribing people, but he won. He was opposition. He convinced people based on ideas and experience. One of his funniest stories that I picked as a young person then, because Constituent Assembly was 2 years, so he used to say on a rally that, we need a short period to make a constitution for Uganda. First, we need educated people who understand democracy. He was a professor, given, very intelligent. So he said too, we need people who understand the ways of parliament. Said by that time, this my brother, and they married from the same family. So it wasn't that enmity, they married sisters, the 2 men. They said my in-law here, by the time he understands which door leads to which committee room, which door goes to the washroom, 6 months will have passed. And the Ugandans will not be represented. I've been there, I know all the doors, I know everything. So there is no time for runners. And everybody sent to Verondo. In the first election organized by NUP, he didn't use money. So when you look today,
I remember the late Prime Minister George Cosmas Adievo describing his opponent, and in not very kind words, he said, I fear that we may end up with a by-election should we elect this man, because he does not know how even to cross the roads in Kampala.
So it was similar across the country.
So you can't just elect people like these ones to go for
Kampala.
Yeah. So please let's stop
Take
here.
people who know the
Let's take people who
can cross the road.
Yeah.
who know these things.
The stories were
It was a very light one.
the same. Yeah. Then they were entertaining. Professor Kanyamba, who is just a pastor, carried his law library, the key books. So he would sit on a rally with a table and put them. I said, you see these books? These are principles of laws and the law drafting and the legal making processes. I know them by head. I'm a professor. I'm going to make the constitution. By the time these computers of mine read these books to come to the level where I am, 2 years will have passed.
And indeed, when he reached there, he was the chairman of the drafting committee.
So we need people who can just on your marks get set to go, not to learn.
So that's interesting. And I want to come to you, Joe.
So when you come to money now, money has repressed ideas in our politics. It's no longer about merit. It's no longer about who has idea. And we need to reset that clock. Every party needs to organize, and it doesn't need money. Every party needs to organize grassroots candidates debates. You pass from level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. Policy ideas, competition. Then you qualify to come to the national level for competition. Minus that, the country has gone to the dogs.
Okay, thank you. George and Major, I want to come to you. Money replacing ideas, the transactional nature of our politics that we see today. Do you really think it is possible to reboot? We're also looking at the times that have changed. The vast majority of our young people today may not, they're driven by material things, the need to earn wealth quickly, and that's also the numbers that we are seeing getting into political spaces. Many of these ideas that we talk about here might seem like abstract things. Yes, they make sense. It is the right thing. But how do you recondition that national psyche to actually let them understand that ideas are more important than money? Are you confident that we can actually get to that point in time? Can we get back to the caliber of politicians we had in 1994? Is it possible?
Yes, I think it is. You see, transactional politics. You see, votes have a price, but legitimacy does not. You can buy votes, but you may not be able to buy legitimacy. Those are completely two different things. Mm-hmm. So you can call yourself an elected leader, but without actually having the electorate behind you. And because of that, it has consequences. And soon, though the unintended consequences of this transactional politics will have far-reaching ramifications, negative to the whole country. And human beings have a tendency of resetting themselves. I said, all of us, by the way, are created with some factory setting. So we retreat to that factory setting once we get ourselves clogged. And we are almost there. I've told people that be careful when people decide to reclaim that legitimacy. They will do it in the most indiscriminate way. And at that point, they do not care. At that point, what matters to them is their interests. So no amount of money is going to stop them. So, and at that point, the country will have a reset. A reset. So there is going to be, people are going to reclaim that space. And they're going to make it very expensive for those who think that transactional politics will take them anywhere. We have reached this point where we are almost at our worst. We can't get any worse than this. So because change is natural, that change will only be better. Because we can't go any worse than what we have already experienced. The good news is that even policy, legislation, and so on is a result of experience. It can be good experience, can be a bad experience. So once you get into a situation where there's a bad experience, there is usually, naturally, there's a tendency to say, let's change. And then we'll have changes in our regulations, changes in our, but you see, the character of our politics has got to change. And for us to change the character of our politics, people must first experience the worst of it. I am glad that there is an outcry, and that outcry is not very specific to any political organization. It has gone everywhere. The NRM that you were saying here, people are crying all over. And you've seen them, they are on TV, on radio, everywhere people are crying because of the use of money in our elections. You have seen that in other political parties, people are equally crying, you know, because you are creating a class society, a so-called class society. Those who have the money are now the ones that can procure leadership. Yet they are not cut out to even provide any leadership at all. So in the end, you are going to have a club of moneyed people sitting there who don't care about society. And we shall have a total vote of no confidence on anything that looks like elected leaders. And people will definitely retreat back and reclaim that space. So do not underestimate the power of an aggrieved society. They have capacity to retrieve, to claim back what rightfully belongs to them.
Thank you, George. Major.
I was still thinking about Sarah's illustration of Tiberonda. I don't know. I have a fair idea about Ankole, but it's 30 years then, so I don't know. I don't know whether Tiberonda defeated Mushega in CA.
He did.
All I know is that at the expansion of NRC, when there was a need to expand NRC, there was call for election of leaders. And that is when nearly all the UPC in Ankole came back. That is Tiberonda, Butajira, Kanyomozi, nearly all of them came back in the NRC then. Because at that expansion time, Mushega was a minister, so he was already a member of NRC. In fact, he was a historical member of NRC. So he didn't need to stand. So he didn't need to stand because he was already a member. CA, maybe you are right, but I thought CA came.
We'll check the records.
Yeah.
It may be Mushega was nominated.
But Amanya
because there were some.
Mushega was in the CA.
Yes, but our delegate, CA delegate,
I don't
was
know, but,
Tiberonda.
But anyway, what else? The subject on the table.
Mushega was among the nominees, I think.
The subject on the table is quite intriguing. My view, I've always been thinking, is that between the voters and the voted, who brought money? My view is that it is the leaders who introduce money. Especially at a time when we're going into liberal, massive democratic system, that the leaders who found themselves wanting started to devise means of compensation by giving voters. So they thought they would compensate their weakness by giving voters money. Little did they know that it would turn into. At the beginning, voters were not asking for money. It is the incompetent leaders or candidates who introduce salt, who introduce soap, who introduce money as a way of compensating or outwitting their supposed qualitatively better competent candidates. Unfortunately, this system came alongside a time when the global system was also undergoing a general international economic structure. World Bank, IMF, privatization, where everything was like nothing like moral. Moral is a social category. Moral is what all of us agree to be right or wrong. But once IMF, World Bank restructured the economy, what is our moral may not be my moral. In other words, somebody would say it is immoral to practice prostitution, but for me, I think it's all right to sell my body. So once you privatize the economic fabric, even the moral thinking becomes privatized. So we are now going along in the political system of pluralism with a rapid international economic transformation hitting the world, or hitting Africa for that case, and we learn into a mass. Therefore, it was unfortunate that the leaders who came at that time came up along in their need for a compensation. So here, in my opinion, it is not the voters who started, it is the voted. Now that we are here, what needs to be done? For me, what needs to be done is to disinterest people in public leadership. At least in disinterest in terms of economic aspect. The hefty payments for political leaders need to be reduced. Judith, we were one time crying for the highest paid person in Uganda being the governor of Bank of Uganda. Do you know that an MP earns that? Simple. You're crying that the Bank of Uganda is well paid 40 million, but somebody selected from Kapchora, from
Senior 6 or
Senior 6, and he earns the same thing like the Bank of Uganda governor.
But the Bank of Uganda governor who signs on money must be paid equivalent to his functions and competence and experience.
Therefore,
You agree?
as long as we are still having lots of spaces for employment into political spaces and hefty payment, to the fact that Parliament is nearly the only body so far, they try to reject it, that determines its own emolument. Here you are, you sit and determine how much. There were times to say, let another body decide how much everybody earns. But I don't know how far it went. So it is still a status quo that Parliament determines its own emoluments. So as far as long as we still have that visible, dangling economic interest, we shall continue to have corruption in political acquisition of offices.
So on the issue of liberalization and / capitalism, and you blaming it for our skewed moral consciousness, I find it a little bit wanting. We know societies that are highly capitalistic, but also still have their governance issues in check. We know, and many of these societies actually have very high numbers of atheists. We consider ourselves to be a society of believers. We believe in God and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, we are the ones who are so morally inept. I'm struggling to actually buy into that argument that it is this libertarian approaches or philosophies that are responsible for our moral shortcomings. I don't know.
Okay, take a country like USA, or take a country like Sweden, the pure capitalist countries. They have developed systems of monitoring and restrictions so much. A country like USA, did you know that USA is literally a country run on law? First of all, because it has not even any systems of moral rule. For example, UK lives in an island, and it developed and crystallized its own civilization. It is the only country of democratic system without a constitution. But in America, where you have all Chinese, American, German, French, Africans, whatever, no man's land, the only thing that governs you is rule of law. The law has to hang on you. So things are so restricted, not only legally, but in systems. I told you that even the systems of a supermarket is itself regulatory, to the extent that what appears to you that there's no corruption, there's already a system to put it in a break.
So in other words, what we are missing is having a strong system to check the moral deficiencies.
So that's what I'm saying, to disinterest. I was going to still to go to the disinteresting, to the extent that we need, say, in the electoral system, stronger laws, not only to sanction the receiver of a material gain, or even sanction the giver, but even sanction the receiver. Because for now, the tendency seems, on the statute book, there's a prohibition on buying votes. There's a prohibition on giving salt. A member of parliament from Lower, Rebecca, I remember, was removed by court of law because she repaired a borehole. As long as court found that there was a proof that Rebecca repaired borehole during campaign, court threw Rebecca out of parliament. The laws are there, but you can see the weakness. It only covers the E who gives. So even if the E who receives, there's still weakness in the implementation of the law in the receiving. We have laws which prohibit it. I say again, Honorable Rebecca, the woman MP for Luer, was removed from parliament for repairing a borehole. And court considered like it was corruption, buying votes, because that was not the time so I was supposed to repair a borehole using our money. So I go back to my point of that you need structural systems, both at votes and even at all levels, to make sure, because if you give it to human will, it will definitely rot. It will definitely go. So you need controlled system in all aspects.
So yeah, George.
You know,
today I came here to sit.
No, you are going to
I've
talk.
been
But
here
you
for
were the
1 hour.
first person. No, you're going to talk. You're going to talk. Yes, George.
You see, we need to criminalize. I think the threshold has been lowered so much, and people get away with a lot. And until we make it very expensive for those who engage in transactional politics, as long as they get away with it all the time, then you'll culture it. It becomes, nobody will respect the rules of engagement. So at the moment we have sanctions, but we do not have sufficient tools to enforce, and we are doing it selectively. I remember even Luchamuzi lost a parliamentary seat because he failed to declare. You see, so some of those things, the application of those laws, if they were done,
they just bite, our laws just bite like the wrong crook.
You get it?
The faulty crook, which tells the right time.
Twice a day.
Yeah, so if we had, like Honorable Awich is saying, we have a whole range of rules, regulations governing elections.
And we have
even sanction regimes around some of these. But who enforces them? You see, in Kololo here, there was whole evidence, and people cried loud even during the process, saying there is something going on here.
And no one listened.
But there was
no cancelling of election.
No authority
authority was coming through to say, let's get
to the
you know,
bottom of this and
yes,
fix it.
and let us sanction those who are involved in this vice. Now, that's one point. The other is that do not underestimate how vulnerable our populations are. Poverty is so dehumanizing. Poverty is so dehumanizing. So much so that sometimes when you listen to the stories of how people's opinion or voting patterns were swayed by very, very little.
Sometimes a plate
money.
of food.
You get it? By very, very little amounts of money. 5,000 shillings, 3,000 shillings. You know, less than $1, and somebody changes their position. So that tells you that there are things that we have got to deal with if we are to demonetize our elections. One, we have got to deal with the poverty. You know, the Afuna Adula used to have a very, very interesting conversation. I remember one time during the debates at Mitchell Hall, and he was there with the Professor Ndolerire, and then Kajavago, and there was, and actually one day I remember the minister, Otafire. So Afuna Adula used to talk so much about the different types of poverty. And he said the worst form of poverty is intellectual poverty. Yeah? Intellectual poverty. You people, you should fight to fight intellectual poverty. So Otafire told him, said, you know, next time I'm invited for a debate, and one of the panelists is Afuna Adula, I will not come. Because I'm disappointed because this man every time talks about intellectual poverty. It's like a weaver band who sings the same song every single day. But there is also material poverty, and says, you see, you cannot talk about intellectual poverty without dealing with material poverty. You see, so all these elements of poverty, we have got to address them if we really have got to get a conscious population that does not have their vote for sale. You know, that's where countries like America, you're talking about those democracies, liberal democracies. It's because their institutions function essentially because they target, you know, if you are an American politician, what you would consider here bribery is in the form of policy influence. So, you know, they have, what do they call them? Lobbyists. Yeah. They want to ensure that whichever government comes in place has
their interests
embedded. So it's more into policy. It's not individual. Ours here is individual because our vulnerabilities are very individual. Poverty speaks louder individually. So people just go, and you have seen people lining up and they're given 1,000 shillings. We can't arrest these people, and yet they are there. So we have got to deal with the culture of bribery that we have allowed to thrive. And these people come and tell their stories very proudly when they are now elected leaders in parliament. My opponent was sleeping. For me, I'd woken up in the middle of the night and I'd called, you know, and I was lining up with 2,000 shillings and I was giving them while they were sleeping. And the next morning, the vote had changed. 2,000. You see? So this so-called moral decay is being facilitated by the levels of desperation, poverty in our population. Let's deal with that.
Yes. Dr. Ojiambo, you've been quiet for a very long time, and no, you didn't come here to be quiet. But I had also given you a lot of time because you were the first person, so I am allowing you
Teachers
to...
never keep quiet.
Yes, carry on.
I even don't know what to say because people have said so many things. Now I don't know.
What touched your heart?
I don't know what I can respond to. But let me start from where I started at the beginning so that I just become today monotonous. I said we need to look at the background or the foundation of these parties that we are complaining about. I have always been debating with Major Awich here. Of course, each party has a conflict of interest. He has to defend his side, and may I have also to defend my view. I don't believe that these parties that govern Africa are normal political parties. In fact, most of them, if you look at them carefully, they have initials NRMA. You can call it NRM or NRA. RPFA. You can call it RPF or RPA. And so on, the list continues. So they came with the background of the army. They always have the army, and the army feels that they are part of that party, and the party feels they are part of that army. For example, the president of Uganda has many times said, please don't disturb my army. And because of that, they create a reaction that is similar to it, but the state cannot allow any other person to have an army. So you have NUP, but with foot soldiers. Why soldiers? Why?
Soldier.
Soldier.
S-O-J-A.
Yeah, but they are soldiers. When you see how they dress, their behavior, they want to be as if they are like a pseudo army.
Of a political parties, yeah.
And that's what causes the problem. You remember DP had Solida, FDC has the 10-10 people, and so on and so forth. So this, in most cases, make the parties to lose their real issues. Because parties are supposed to be on ideology and the problems of the people. If you look at how parties came up in Britain, it was because of the problems that were affecting people. So the Labour Party comes to help the people who are suffering from exploitation in job situations. The Conservative Party comes to protect, and the Democratic Party in the US, and so on and so forth. They don't have armies. But these ones in Africa have armies. So it's only countries like Kenya, where there are pressure groups, the ODM, there are pressure groups which emerge. They don't have armies. And that's why you see in Kenya, the army does not so much participate in political activity. Now, that is one problem. The second problem in Uganda, because the country does not create jobs. The country is producing mainly hand to mouth. People are really surviving hand to mouth. Even the very nice people you see out there who are big with big jobs, they are on hand to mouth thing. And also getting a job in Uganda now has become very difficult. Recently, URA advertised 15 positions, and 1,040 people applied. They did the interviews from Makerere University because they would not have anywhere to do interviews. Now, elections have become the biggest source of employment.
Also some of the people, I saw Professor Latigo saying his daughter, who had worked at URA but also came top in some of the interviews, was not given.
Yeah, those are now, when there are so many, you have to also pay money. In fact, that's another area where people pay money. Now, the only thing that has remained as a source of employment is elections. I've always given you this example, that in Uganda, you have public servants paid by the Consolidated Fund, 367,000 or thereabout, because they keep reducing and adding, but they have not yet reached 400,000. Being supervised by 2 million politicians, from LOC1 to the president. There are 2 million of them. So the only source of employment in this country now is politics. Now, when it comes to this scenario that we are discussing today, you find that the political party now has become the employer. They are the ones who second you to any job that you want. If you want to become a president, political party. If you want to become MP, political party. If you want to become councillor, LOC, political party. So because of that, the political parties have become vulgarized entities with very weak institutions. And Uganda, we want to pretend. We pretend a lot. I've normally heard my colleagues from NRM, they argue with me that their government is not a dictatorship because they conduct elections. Elections are only one element of democracy. It is just one. It is, you know, they equate democracy to elections. I've argued that elections is only one element of democracy. We have accountability, we have respect of human rights, we have all those other things. Now, the biggest question we are discussing today here is the issue of accountability, where people don't account. This bribery and what have you, which we are now discussing here, is because the leaders don't account. Each leader that is worth the name is not accountable. For example, how would a leader sit there and you say you are conducting an election and they are showing on TV that the election is fraudulent? It is fraudulent. People are giving money. People are being voted for. For example, I told Major Awich that there is no way you could organize an election at Kololo where you don't have clear standards. In other groups, they are voting as districts. In other groups, they are voting as regions. In other groups, they are voting as interest groups. So there are no standards. So they say when we come to the West, we are voting in regions. In Kampala, please, Buganda, it is districts. Districts. Now, it brings a mess. And that's why we have a problem in NUP. NUP, it is not clear on how you get a candidate to be given a flag. I like CCM. CCM, when I was a student in Dar es Salaam, I was nominated and rated to go and observe the elections in Dodoma. Theirs, it is a dictatorship. CCM runs a dictatorship type of election. For example, you can go through in primaries, but when they take you to the central committee, they have a central committee. The central committee can reject you and give reasons. And the central committee is respected. People have been used to the central committee, that when the central committee rejects you, there is nothing that can be done. Now, when you finish the central committee, you go to the National Executive Committee. Now, in the National Executive Committee can also reject you. I can give you an example. In October last year, they were selecting candidates for CCM. And there was this candidate who was even a former minister of foreign affairs and the son of also a former minister called Yusuf Makamba. Now, Yusuf Makamba went to his constituency in primaries, won the primaries. When it came to the central committee, the CCM told him, no, you cannot be our candidate because of A, B, C, D. And Yusuf Makamba is not on the ballot paper in next month's election. So they have understood that. Now, NRM, NUP, DP should come up with the clear modes of selecting their candidates, and they popularize it to their candidates, because as we speak now, some candidates up to now are wondering why they are number 2. They don't know. They don't know why they are number 2. And I saw, I have evidence, this one of Mutebi, of Chira, was saying he doesn't even believe. Where did he fail? Where did he fail? And it comes to what she was saying. You are saying you are going to get 60% from the ground. But what are the standards of the ground, so that I know, so that even I can campaign in the ground there and also make myself popular? So at the end of the day, it brings a lot of disgruntlement, and this disgruntlement affects us. Lastly, I have said that why some of us, I'm not a politician, but why some of us comment about these things is because what the mess they carry out there affects our life. If you're a sensible Ugandan, the way you saw NRM carrying out the elections at Kololo, you don't trust those people that after they have been elected, those gangsters, can build good roads, can build a good education system, can build a good health system. You don't trust, and it is true. That's why they have failed. Although some people normally try to tell us that they have not failed. If you want to know that they have failed, you go to Mulago. People now go to Mulago Hospital to pick a death certificate. The survival rate for people who go to the Cancer Institute is only 4%. If you go to these other places, you need to go and look at the statistics of the people who are admitted at a given time and those who went home walking, who did not pass through the mortuary. That's when you will know that our system has problems. So at the end of the day, that's why we complain. We don't have any problem with anybody. So NUP has to organize itself because they are the alternative. They have come up as an alternative. The alternative cannot be worse than what they want to replace.
Okay, thank you. And we should be winding up. So I'd just like us to discuss the way forward. Clearly, our parties are plagued with serious crisis of confidence. How do they salvage this and regain the trust and faith of Ugandans? I would start with you, Sarah.
Yeah, first of all, parties have to organize themselves. Because what defines a party? The requirement for forming a party is getting a number of districts per region, meaning that it should have a national outlook. Once you get that nominal national outlook, the leadership of the party must give confidence to the people. We have argued privately in several circles that the best fighting chance for opposition, genuine opposition that is known, and most people's consensus is that the opposition parties we have is the PFF, ANT, and NUP. The others, the trust levels are low in terms of whether they are genuine opposition or not. So the consensus in most meetings is that the three parties have to unite, front a leadership that gives credibility to the side that is seeking change, and give confidence to the voters that change is possible, that there is capacity to run government and create something better than what is existing. Anything less of what is existing is not change in Uganda. And I don't know whether people understand that. If anybody wants to offer less than where NRM has taken us, you are joking. It will not work. It won't. So the first way forward, one, NRM needs to clean their house. They cannot remain a crime scene, like the mess in Kororo, fake delegates, sacks of money, or the Hurabaro violence, fighting. One of their advisors is in hospital. Yeah. So they have to do better, with or without a push from opposition. So then the opposition have to front a credible national team that would give all actors confidence that change is possible. In the absence of that, they will be competing for second best position. They are not competing to take power. Mm-hmm. So if our opposition has settled to say the highest they can go is second best, then let them enjoy their right. But if anybody wants to take power, they must bring on table what is better than what is prevailing. Mm-hmm. The legendary journalist in Tanzania, Odongo, he likes recalling that in 1986, NRM fronted a first-class cabinet that could have led any country, be it US, be it any developed country in Europe, and they would qualify as a cabinet in any country. First class. President Museveni had the humility to bring on board even people who were fiercely disagreeing with his method. It's like Professor Zvambi, David Paul Cole, as a junior lecturer at Makerere, was very opposed in 86, but he had to agree, sit on the table, and create room for everybody to act. That 1986 cabinet would have taken, together with the CA delegates, would have made Uganda a first world country, without a doubt, if they were uninterrupted. So anybody who wants to offer leadership must benchmark from the two. In my view, do I have on my side players that can match the 1986 cabinet? Of course, from time President Museveni, for him, his standard of keeping power was to lower the threshold. So he has degenerated over time. So, but anybody now who wants power needs to pick from there. Can I make a parliament that can bring back the CA standard? Can I make a cabinet in terms of competence, capacity, and experience that can match 1986? Then that group will take power in this country. But these jokes of whatever I am telling you, the position will be second best.
Thank you. George. Emerging from this crisis of confidence that parties have, how do they restore the hope and faith of citizens?
Parties are a reflection of what goes on in our society. So when you see the mess in NUP, or the transactional nature of the politics that characterized our elections within the NRM, and all these other vices that you see, it's a reflection of what is going on in our society. So the crisis of confidence, you know, the credibility deficit that our political parties suffer from is because of the culture, the political culture that we have developed over the years. Now, how do we deal with it? One, I think that we need, the way our society is structured, we need to do power mapping. You know, the scientists will call it a fresh social algorithm. You have traditional institutions, you have religious institutions. You know, this used to be, you have schools, the teaching profession. You know, these people really have got to reclaim their space. When you see traditional leaders getting themselves involved in partisan politics, and they also have a price, and then you see religious leaders also involved in partisan politics, and then once they receive donations, they also begin to speak in tongues in church. Then you have those in the teaching profession, you know, beginning to take sides and, you know, having a very skewed approach in the way they are bringing up, nurturing children. Then the problem is beyond just how the political organizations are formed and how they behave. So these are institutions that have an influence on how we conduct ourselves in society, must have a deeper reflection. So we need traditional institutions to actually reclaim their space to talk about traditional values, to talk about our traditional systems, and celebrate excellence. You know, you have these churches, all the religious organizations, institutions, they should seize the pulpit, and instead of weaponizing the Bible and the Quran and all the others, you know, to advance narrow political interests, they need to start talking about what biblical value systems, the Quran, what it speaks about haram and so on and so forth. We need that software element in our society to prepare ourselves for, you know, for a society to be able to reject what is not what
is not good for it, what doesn't advance it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as long as you have all these people becoming, transform themselves into special purpose vehicles for achieving
Merchant.
political interests.
Merchants.
You see, then we are doomed, because these are the speed governors. You know, these are the people who are giving you the moral compass, and they're above reproach. You know, I was telling somebody that, you know, within, for example, I can speak for the NRM, for example, that, you know, we need, within the structure of the national resistance movement, a completely different organ that vets candidates. You see,
We can even hire experts.
you can even, you know, we need that. And this organ should be of people of very high moral character. People who have been tested. They have passed a certain test, public test. And people have confidence in their decision. And they begin to vet all these candidates. So that you see, if you're running for a position of this, of SEC, for example, in our case, we had SEC vetting itself, because we had SEC members sitting to vet SEC, people who are running.
Nominees.
You see,
It was a
you
direct conflict.
you can't be a judge in your own case, and then you want to disqualify this one. You want to, you know, you are sitting now there as a SEC member. Then tomorrow, you know, so it doesn't work like that. You know, in CCM, like what he has said, in other jurisdictions, you will have a completely different organ of people who are protected. Okay, very much protected. And once they make a decision on a candidate,
it's binding.
You have nowhere else to go. If they say that your moral record, okay,
it's questionable.
It's questionable. It does not matter which position you hold in the party or in the government. You will not
take the flag.
Can
I add something? Just to briefly, do you know CCM, when Jakaya Kikwete won, the first time he won the flag for the presidency, Mwalimu Nyerere told him that this is not a popularity context. You're still lacking in experience. First learn. And they took away the flag from him. He had
and
won
gave it to Ben.
overwhelmingly. So that reasoning would apply to the situation of Segon and who is it? That
Walukaga.
And Walukaga.
Yeah.
Yes, Judge Karian.
So you see, so you know, I have come to realize that votes alone should not determine. Yes, you should be voted. That's good. But I think that before you are voted, you must have a certain standard, so that whoever is voted meets that standard. People now will have to vote according to other, but you know, you have a minimum, you know, you have a minimum threshold, okay, below which you don't qualify. So once we set the bar high, we will be able to sift through some of these candidates and be able to vet and get them there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Major, you, and then lastly, Dr. Ojiambo. Restoring confidence in parties. How do you win back public trust and faith?
Yeah, it's really something all actors should work on, because we generally agree that there's something wrong, especially as far as the subject matter is concerned, that is fraud in areas of election. So it's a matter that needs everybody's attention. But first, Dr. Robert was talking of failures of NRM and was trying to illustrate it. I don't think a Cancer Institute is the best example. We have had issues with Mulago, and we try to say they should make it better. It is a national referral hospital. There are many things which are wanting, and we really want it done better. But to give a test of pass or failure for NRM for cancer is a little bit difficult, because cancer is a disease you can't cure.
It cures. Very many as cured. You go to statistics in India and USA.
That is why in a common vocabulary they said cancer has eaten our society. That is when, say, you are talking of corruption. Cancer, meaning that literally you are referring to something once it has dropped. The general rule is that it can't be cured. The exception is that it may be cured. And therefore, many people of cancer states are palliative. They just maintain your life. In some of those societies you are saying, there are very many cases where people hoped for the doctor to kill them. They just lie on their bed and they agree that you come and inject me, I die. It's very common in those countries for cancer.
I have two, since you are responding to what I said, I have two testimonies. My two professors, they are Tanzanians. One is now 84 and another one is 78. They have all cured. One from intestinal cancer, another one had throat cancer.
But Major hasn't objected. He said there are exceptional cases. There are always exceptions, yeah.
It is a general case and there is the exception. Therefore, judging NRM pass or failure from cancer is something which should be set aside. But we really want an advocate for Malawi to be made better. Now, on the subject at hand is that at party level, for example, at individual party level, ideally the laws of Uganda demand that each political party should have its code of conduct. We do have it in NRM, but I also still think that there are gaps that need amendment. For example, it looks like the prohibition we're importing from the laws of the state. Now, because it is not properly captured in the code of conduct, people have an idea that you're not supposed to give money, and even in the tribunal, nobody has actually insisted on presenting evidence of bribe. Because it's not even in our code of conduct. So people tend to think it is a way. So we need to enrich and strengthen the code of conduct at party level and seek to know that it is functioning. For example, internally I've had issues. For example, if you go to Lira, like we had a campaign when the minister was shot, a party member who even holds a position goes on the radio and says, Museveni has given 2 billion shillings for that election, and Tanga Doe has eaten. So for us, we are not voting. Now, that alone, even if you don't go to the wider public, you can see the harm that it does inside the party. Because people know Mr. X is a party chairman in the municipality, and therefore he has said, which is false. Therefore, to let the party come back to its birth, there's a need for even internal code of conduct. UPC has in its law saying there shall be a code of conduct, but there is none. And most of these parties, actually all of these parties, none of them have a code of conduct. We have code of conduct with quasi-judicial or judicial provision at all levels, which is supposed to have a court. So even in case of bribery or in case of use of bad language, whatever it is, we should be having party courts sitting, either at branch level, sub-county, county, or district. We should be having party courts functioning. In that case, we would be trying ourselves to cleanse ourselves internally before we even face the national laws. And of course, I still reinforce what I had said earlier, the disinteresting of material interest to leaders and all that kind. So I still insist on that. So if parties internally check themselves, using their codes of conduct, using their court system, quasi-judicial system, which is embedded in their code of conduct, we would try to change this status quo. Because you do not expect an outsider to come and enforce discipline in a party. Who would be the complainant? Who would be the accused? So since it is both inside that we shall ourselves be having the complainant and the accused, so more of it is internal born for the solution to be brought. So therefore it calls for the strengthening of code of conduct and seeing that it works. Remember, in our system, we try to put the rebel MPs in our courts. And the rebel MPs, you saw what it ended in. But still, that was a test to see whether our code of conduct can be put to test. And this not only need to be done at national level, because the constitution or the code of conduct provides at all levels. If we set this into action, it would be a lot better.
Thank you.
If
And
I may
last-
ask Awich before he comes in last, Awich was the case of the rebel MPs. Because the court ruled that a party cannot gag their members, sort of, I'm not going into the technical framing of the judgment. So what had they violated in your view? Just for the benefit of viewers.
Personally, I thought the framing was wrong, because the framing was that by the act of them talking what they were talking in parliament, they had crossed. So they were saying, since you have crossed, then the constitution says you should leave parliament. But then the issue then was, if I'm a member of parliament on NRM and I criticize, does that amount to crossing?
Dissent.
So the court held that they had not crossed. They have just spoken. But still we see that it was an attempt at our judicial system. Although I blame the framers of the issues before that tribunal. They framed it wrongly and ended up concluding wrongly, which was challengeable. Because what they framed was that by talking in parliament, by not towing the caucus position, it amounted to crossing. And the court said, no, by not towing caucus, by talking your mind, it doesn't mean crossing. Crossing should be defined in law as to actions that amount to crossing. That's what killed their case. But still we saw that it was an attempt at the judicial system within the party, which we think should even go down to the district, to the other level. Because there are a lot of rot, the bribery and everything takes place in the constituency, in the districts.
Yes, Robert,
for me, I think the elephant in the room in Uganda and many of these African countries is service delivery at the grassroots. That is what is causing problems. And you have seen these politicians, MPs and the councillors and what have you, they dupe and cajole civilians or the population that they are going to work for them. But you see, most of them don't have capacity to do what they are promising to do. They don't have capacity to construct roads. They don't have capacity to.
But is it their duty?
That's what I am saying. That's what I'm saying. They cajole people at, you know, this one is capable to construct roads, to construct schools. That is not their job. That is the job of the state. The state can only do that because we pay it tax. We pay it tax, and it is the one which has a budget to run. So at the end of the day, you hear somebody saying that it is very expensive to run a constituency. So, therefore, if I also get something there, I have to give back to the constituency because we are supporting them. And it creates a lot of problems. But if the governments did what they are supposed to do, provide education, because that is their job. That is what the president promises the people. And for him, he runs a budget. He constructs roads. He constructs hospitals. He makes sure that there is law and order. These people would not cajole many others. And he talk about what Honorable Odongo talked about material poverty. People are complaining. I've always said here, now children are planning to go to school. Men and women are talking on the road alone because this education system is just too expensive, irrespective of the universal primary education, universal secondary education, because people have discovered that those things are really universal primary education, universal secondary education, but without education. So everybody is struggling for a private school because the other ones are really, because of the stimulus law. People go there, somebody reaches P7 and cannot write his name. So who will take his child to such a place? They struggle for private schools, which are very expensive. Uganda is one of the most expensive countries in education, if you check it around here. That's why you don't see any more Tanzanians, Kenyans coming here. I pay school fees for my nephews in Kenya. It is as low as 300,000 shillings in a provisional school For them, they have arranged their schools. They have district schools, provincial schools,
That's a
national
regional.
school,
Yeah.
and the regional school. Now, at the end of the day, if these problems are not solved, this issue of corruption is going to linger in society, whether you put laws, because when you put the laws, who is going to implement the law? I'm very, very happy that Awich said that they have a code of conduct. I want to ask the viewers, you people who have been watching these elections from LOC1 chairman at the village to the national level at, did you see any code of conduct working in these things? It was lawless. In fact, the code of conduct is as dead as I don't know what. So I really feel that we need to be proactive. We need to be proactive. But as I end, I think the citizens need to wake up. You know, people have lost interest in politics. I have talked to a number of my friends, and they are promising not to vote next year. We do that at our own peril, because the more we get disinterested, the funny people will come and take that gap. That's why in Parliament, Sarah said there are now people who don't know what they are supposed to do on a certain matter. They go there and they are just gaping as if they have been captured and taken there. It's because the right people have now thought that politics is not for them. And the other guys have taken the chance. A man goes there and he doesn't know even what Parliament is supposed to do. Yeah. So I think people need to take up their role. We may not be candidates. I'm not a candidate. But I need to influence which type of... We don't want, like for us who come from MPs who are at least national, I will not mention their name because I'll look like I'm campaigning for them. Let's campaign for these MPs, not to allow what she called the clowns to come and pass them.
Well, just one sentence. Building on, I know we are time bad, on Dr. Jambo's statement. I want to use an African proverb that a cat which wants to become a lion must lose its appetite for rats. Because the citizens, if you want good service, you must lose your appetite for 2,000 bribery, 5,000, 10,000. Somebody's buying your sovereign power for 5,000.
True.
That might not even last you a day in Kampala. Lose your appetite for rats. That's the only way we shall build democracy in this country.
Well, thank you very much. And well, thank you for watching up to this time. We've been talking about the new party flags controversy and the fight for a fair process. But as you've heard, this has not just been a conversation about one political party. Rather, it has been a broader discussion about the very principles of democracy, transparency, and accountability, which we as citizens must demand from our leaders. Thank you very much to our panelists, Dr. Robert Ojiambo, Dr. Sarah Bireete, Honorable George Odongo, and retired Major Awich Pollar. And to you all for watching, thank you very much. Join us next week, same time, as we shine the spotlight on issues that matter. My name is Judith Atim. Bye-bye.